Ethan Cole never thought his life would end with him running across alien worlds, hiding from a queen whose name alone could make planets tremble. Just days ago, he had been a scientist working for Earth's exploration program, studying distant planets, collecting energy crystals that might save humanity from an energy crisis. He had never expected that a single misstep could make him the most wanted human in the galaxy. It all began on the planet Zithera 7, a world covered in shimmering violet forests and lakes that reflected three suns. The planet seemed alive, its trees whispering faintly and strange creatures scuttling beneath the glowing foliage. Ethan had come to collect energy crystals from the cavernous mines that lay beneath the surface, unaware that these mines were sacred to the alien civilization that called Zithera 7 home. The first mistake was curiosity. The second was underestimating the intelligence of the Zithurians. As he lowered his equipment into the mine shaft, he accidentally triggered an ancient mechanism. A surge of light shot out, resonating through the cavern. The walls hummed, and holographic patterns filled the space, depicting scenes of Zithurian history and rituals. Ethan stepped back, trying to recalibrate his instruments, but a pulse of energy flung him against the cavern wall. Before he could understand what happened, alarms echoed from above, and a voice boomed in a language he barely understood. Somehow, through universal translation, the words became clear. "Intruder, you dare touch the sacred crystals of Zithera 7? The Queen demands your capture." He had read about her in brief reports, a ruler of an empire spanning dozens of star systems, known for her intelligence, beauty, and absolute authority. Her name alone could terrify entire civilizations. And now, somehow, she wanted him dead. He ran. His boots pounded the glowing soil as he scrambled through the trees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The Zithurian patrols were swift and precise, their armor shimmering in the fading light of the three suns. Ethan's heart raced as he dodged between trees and leapt over crystalline streams. He could hear their hoverpods scanning the area, engines whirring like high-pitched cries. For hours he ran, using every trick he knew. He had always believed in preparation. He had trained for survival, for emergencies, but nothing could have prepared him for running from a civilization that could read his every move almost before he made it. He scrambled up a ridge and hid among jagged rocks, watching as the patrols swept past below, seemingly unaware of him. For the first time, he allowed himself a moment to breathe, though the dread of being discovered pressed on his mind like a heavy weight. He could not return home. Earth would see him as a criminal, someone who had endangered relations with a powerful alien species. The mission that had once been a matter of science and hope had turned into a matter of survival. The Zithurians, he realized, would never forgive a trespass, and the Queen, in particular, would never forget. Night fell. On Zithera 7, night was not darkness but a shifting glow of bioluminescent plants that cast ghostly shadows across the landscape. Ethan moved cautiously, relying on his instincts. He avoided open areas, staying close to the strange vegetation that could conceal him from patrols. He needed a plan, a way to survive, and most importantly, a way to escape the Queen's notice. Days became weeks. Ethan learned to travel by night, to scavenge alien plants that were safe to eat, and to avoid the constant gaze of drones patrolling the skies. He made his way across valleys, through glowing forests, and over mountains of crystal that sang when the wind passed through them. With each passing day, he grew more resourceful. A broken hovercraft became a temporary shelter. Crystals served as both light and currency when he encountered alien merchants in hidden outposts. During one of these nights, he encountered a small group of Zithurian outcasts, beings the Queen had exiled for minor crimes or political disagreements. They were wary of him at first, but Ethan's honesty and calm demeanor slowly earned their trust. They shared their food, their knowledge of hidden paths, and warnings of patrols. From them, Ethan learned not all Zithurians were heartless or cruel. Many were capable of compassion, just like humans. Ethan also learned about the Queen through these conversations. Lyra, they said, was more than a ruler. She was a symbol of order and power, but also of wisdom. Few had met her, and fewer had ever lived to tell the tale. Her mercy was rare, her judgments final, and her patience legendary, but so were her moments of unexpected understanding. Ethan clung to that possibility, hoping that one day he might convince her of his innocence. But the threat was constant. Patrols were everywhere, sometimes numbering in dozens, sweeping through forests, mountains, and desert-like plains. Ethan became a master of camouflage, blending with the environment, using alien tools and his own devices to evade capture. Each encounter was a test of his ingenuity, a demonstration of the very human traits that aliens did not fully understand: adaptability, creativity, and resilience. He was forced to leave many places he loved. Hidden villages where Zithurians had shown kindness, glowing rivers where he had bathed, crystal caves where he had rested. All were left behind when patrols drew near. The loneliness gnawed at him more than hunger or exhaustion. Yet even in despair, he found motivation in survival, in proving that humanity could endure against impossible odds. One night, after narrowly escaping a patrol near the edge of the violet forest, he paused by a glowing stream to drink. The water shimmered, reflecting the 3 moons above. He thought of Earth, of the small life he had left behind, and the family he might never see again. Tears welled in his eyes, not from fear, but from the weight of isolation. Yet in that moment he also felt a spark of pride. He had survived days, weeks, months on alien worlds with nothing but his wits and determination. He was human, and that meant something, even here, far from home. Ethan's journey led him to the edge of a desert-like expanse known as the Shifting Plains, a region where sand moved like waves under the influence of the strong winds. Patrols rarely came here, assuming it was impassable, but Ethan knew better. Using knowledge of physics and patterns in the wind, he built a small device to track patrol movements and predict when it would be safe to cross. It was not perfect, but it worked. As he traversed the shifting plains, a strange feeling came over him. The desert was silent, too silent. No patrols, no creatures, nothing but the soft hum of wind over crystal sands. He pressed on cautiously, sensing a presence. Then, without warning, a shimmer appeared in the distance. It was not a patrol, nor an ordinary structure. It was a holographic message, projected in the air, shimmering like a beacon. "Ethan Cole, the Queen knows you are alive. She wishes to see you." Every survival instinct screamed to run, but part of him, part of the human curiosity that had gotten him into this mess, wanted to know why. Why would the Queen summon him personally after all these months of running? He weighed his options. Turning back was dangerous. Patrols would catch him eventually. Ignoring the message could mean the Queen herself would hunt him down relentlessly. Moving forward was risky, terrifying, and possibly suicidal, but it might be the only way to end this chase. He looked to the horizon where the first glow of Zithra 7 morning light touched the sand. With a deep breath, he decided. He would go. Not because he trusted the Queen, not because he thought she would forgive him, but because humans never gave up. Survival was not just instinct, it was a choice, and he had made his choice. With careful steps, Ethan began his journey toward the unknown, toward the Queen herself, knowing that every second counted, that every misstep could be his last. Yet somewhere deep inside, he held onto a single, fragile hope. That humanity, in its resilience, intelligence, and courage, could earn the respect of even the most powerful alien in the galaxy. And so, with the shifting plains stretching endlessly before him, Ethan ran, not from fear alone, but toward a future where a human might prove that survival, courage, and compassion were universal traits worth recognizing. Ethan moved cautiously across the shifting plains, each step sinking slightly into the soft, glittering sand. The air shimmered under Zithra 7 twin suns, and for a moment he thought he saw movement in the distance. But it was only the sand rolling, shifting like waves. Every sense in his body was alert. Months of running, hiding, and surviving had honed his instincts to a razor's edge. The holographic message from the Queen still echoed in his mind. "The Queen wishes to see you." Ethan could not shake a mix of fear and curiosity. No one had ever survived the pursuit of the Queen's patrols this long. If she truly wanted to meet him, it could either be a trap or an opportunity. And humans rarely turned down opportunities, no matter the risk. He began to remember the first days of his flight, how he had learned to move silently, to read alien patrol patterns, to survive on alien food and water. Zithurians had underestimated him, assuming that a human could not endure in environments that would crush the strongest of their soldiers. But humans were clever, and Ethan was resourceful. His mind became his greatest weapon. After several days of traveling across the plains, he arrived at a canyon of purple rock, jagged and sharp under the sunlight. Patrols rarely came here, and he used the canyon as a temporary shelter. At night, he carefully mapped the patrol routes he had observed, noting that the Queen's forces relied on predictable patterns. He realized that even a civilization as advanced as the Zithurians could not anticipate human ingenuity when humans were pushed to extremes. Ethan built small devices from parts he salvaged. fragments of abandoned drones, crystals with energy potential, and pieces of his own equipment. One device could emit a low-frequency pulse, masking his heat signature from patrol sensors. Another could send a decoy signal, confusing any drones that followed him. Every invention, every adaptation was a small victory, a quiet proof of human capability. Despite the focus on survival, loneliness weighed on him. He had been alone for months, with only fleeting encounters with alien wildlife for company. Some creatures were harmless, curious, watching him with glowing eyes from the edges of the forest or across the dunes. Others were deadly, with jagged claws and acid-tipped tails, forcing Ethan to fight or evade with careful strategy. Each encounter reminded him that human life was fragile, but ingenuity and courage could tilt the odds. One night, while hiding in a cave formed by jagged purple rock, he saw movement at the entrance. His heart froze. Patrols rarely came this deep, and approaching any human at this point was almost impossible. But the creatures that emerged were not soldiers. They were Zithurian outcasts, small groups of beings who had been exiled for minor crimes or for speaking against the Queen. At first, they stared at him with suspicion. Ethan raised his hands in peace, speaking slowly in their language he had learned from intercepted transmissions. "I mean no harm, I only wish to survive." "You are human," she said, her voice cautious but not hostile. "We know of your exploits, saving the miners from the collapse, repairing the energy conduits that could have killed hundreds. That is rare here." For the first time in months, Ethan felt a connection, an alliance that crossed species built on trust, respect, and mutual survival. Through them, he learned more about the Queen, Lyra. She was no ordinary ruler. Her wisdom was said to reach across the stars, her judgment precise, and her decisions final. Few could meet her without trembling. Yet some whispered that she understood reason and could see the potential in those she might otherwise destroy. Some even hinted that she respected courage when it was paired with intelligence and morality. Ethan felt a spark of hope. If he could reach the Queen, if he could demonstrate humanity's qualities, resourcefulness, empathy, courage, maybe, just maybe, he could survive the encounter and earn a chance to explain himself. Days turned into weeks as Ethan navigated alien deserts, forests that glowed at night, and rivers that shimmered like liquid glass. He avoided the main trade routes, instead relying on hidden paths and his knowledge of alien topography. Each step forward was dangerous, each decision a gamble. But he was learning, growing, becoming more than just a survivor. He was becoming a symbol of what humanity could achieve even in the most hostile environments. On one particularly hot day, as the suns reached their highest point, Ethan stumbled upon a small village hidden in the rocks. It was abandoned, its buildings silent, and vines creeping across shimmering rooftops. Here, he found relics of Zithurian technology, abandoned drones, and energy cells. He scavenged what he could, repairing some devices to aid in his journey. One small drone, now under his control, could scout ahead, transmitting live visuals back to him. For the first time, he felt he had a real advantage. Yet the shadow of the Queen's pursuit never left him. Patrols still roamed the outer regions of the village, and he could hear distant hums of hovercraft engines. Every move he made had to be calculated. Every step had to ensure that he remained invisible, that he stayed alive. He was no longer just running. He was planning, strategizing, using both human intellect and alien technology to tip the balance in his favor. One night, while resting near a crystal lake, he noticed the first sign that his reputation might be reaching the Queen herself. A Zithurian patrol approached, but instead of attacking, they paused, observing him. Then one of them stepped forward, handing him a small, glowing crystal. A message was encoded within it, using the Queen's signature energy pattern. "Ethan Cole, you have survived longer than expected. You are clever. Lyra watches your actions with interest. Do not falter, human." No longer was he just fleeing. Now he had a path forward, dangerous and uncertain as it was. He had to reach the Queen. He had to show her the value of humanity, and he had to do it without being caught or killed along the way. With renewed purpose, he set off again, traveling under the cover of night, his drone scouting ahead, his mind mapping patrol patterns and alien terrain. He felt the weight of months of isolation and survival, but also the growing strength that came from experience. He had endured, adapted, and learned. He had survived not just by instinct, but by intelligence, empathy, and courage. Ethan realized that human ingenuity was not measured by weapons or technology alone, but by the ability to adapt, to understand, and to act under impossible circumstances. Across the alien landscapes of Zithera 7, he was becoming a living testament to what humanity could do when pushed to its limits. As he traveled toward the distant heart of the Queen's territory, he knew that the ultimate challenge lay ahead. The Queen's reasons for summoning him were unknown, but the possibility of meeting her, of explaining himself, and of demonstrating humanity's worth filled him with cautious hope. And so, night after night, day after day, Ethan pressed forward. Every shadow, every patrol, every dangerous creature became an opportunity to prove that humans were not weak, not fragile, not predictable. He was a human, and that meant resourcefulness, courage, and compassion were his weapons, and perhaps the only way to survive the gaze of the most powerful alien in the galaxy. Ethan had traveled farther than he ever imagined possible. Months of running, hiding, and surviving had sharpened every sense he possessed. He knew the terrain of Zithera 7 better than some of the patrols, and he had learned to read the wind, the shifting sands, and even the glowing plants to sense danger before it struck. Yet, as he approached the borders of the Queen's inner territory, he felt a tension unlike any he had known before. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with power and authority. He paused on the edge of a cliff overlooking a vast valley, where the heart of the Queen's domain spread before him. Massive structures of polished crystal rose like jagged mountains, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns in dazzling patterns. Hovering drones zipped between towers, their eyes scanning constantly for threats. Patrols moved in perfect formation across the crystalline plains below. This was no ordinary city. This was the seat of an empire, and the Queen herself ruled from its heart. Ethan crouched behind a jagged outcrop, letting his eyes absorb every detail. He had survived deserts, forests, rivers, and plains. He had outsmarted patrols, built devices from scraps, and earned the trust of Zithurian outcasts. But this, approaching the center of the Queen's power, was something entirely different. One misstep could mean death. One wrong move, one signal misread, and the months of survival would end in an instant. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Human instincts had brought him this far, but now he needed more: patience, observation, and courage. Every decision would count. Slowly, carefully, he began his descent into the valley, staying within shadows, moving only when patrols turned away. His drone hovered silently above, relaying images to him, scanning for patrols he could not see with his own eyes. As he entered the outskirts of the city, Ethan noticed the subtle differences in this place. While the outer regions of Zithuria were strict and militarized, here there was a sense of order, of elegance, of intelligence applied with precision. The streets were empty of casual life. Only guards and officials moved with purpose. Crystal bridges arched across the city, and strange energy conduits hummed with light, connecting towers and buildings like veins carrying power. Ethan kept to the shadows, slipping along narrow passageways and behind energy conduits until he reached the first checkpoint. Zithurian guards scanned for identification, their armor glowing faintly with energy shields. Ethan crouched in a small alcove, watching their movements. They followed a pattern repeated every minute, almost like a dance. Timing and precision would be key. He waited for the right moment, then dashed across the open ground, low to the surface, using every bit of cover he could find. A guard's eyes flicked in his direction, but the pulse emitted from his small device scrambled the sensors just long enough for him to disappear behind a bridge support. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. Humans survived not just by instinct. They survived by controlling fear, by thinking, and by acting with precision. Inside the city, Ethan found a network of narrow tunnels beneath the crystal towers. They had been part of the original construction, perhaps meant for maintenance or secret passage. He followed the tunnels, the walls glowing faintly, and listened for footsteps above. Occasionally, he heard the low hum of hovercraft engines, reminding him that the Queen's eyes were everywhere. It was in one of these tunnels that Ethan first felt the presence of Lyra, not physically, but through the power that radiated across the city. She was not like any leader he had known. She carried authority in every motion, in every decision. The city itself seemed to respond to her will, and yet he sensed intelligence, curiosity, and perhaps even patience. If she had summoned him, then there must be a reason beyond simple punishment. Hours passed. Ethan navigated the tunnels carefully, avoiding patrols and using his drone to peek around corners. He found signs of life: chambers with equipment, rooms with holographic projections of distant worlds, and archives filled with information about countless civilizations. The Queen's empire was vast, spanning star systems, and the knowledge here was immense. Humans rarely realized the scale of the cosmos until faced with civilizations such as this. Eventually, he reached a chamber that seemed to pulse with energy, a place that drew him forward as if it called his presence. Holographic projections floated in the air, depicting events from across the empire, trade routes, battles, diplomacy, and scientific research. Among them, one projection caught his eye, a star map marking Earth with a glowing symbol. The Queen had been watching humanity, perhaps evaluating him as a representative, perhaps testing him. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Ethan ducked into a recess, holding his breath. A Zethurian patrol passed, their armor glowing, their weapons at the ready. He counted slowly in his head, timing their steps, waiting for them to leave before continuing. Every second mattered. Human patience was being tested alongside courage. After what felt like hours, he reached the base of the central tower, the heart of the Queen's palace. The energy here was intense, almost overwhelming, but Ethan focused, grounding himself. One careful step at a time, he ascended a spiral walkway that wound around the crystalline core, each step bringing him closer to the source of power that had cast a shadow over his life for months. Finally, he arrived at a massive chamber, its ceilings arched impossibly high, with energy conduits forming a lattice of glowing light. At the center, seated on a raised platform, was Lyra herself. Her presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Her eyes, large and luminous, studied him carefully. She was tall, elegant, and her posture radiated authority. Yet there was no anger, at least not yet. Instead, her gaze was curious, assessing, as though she were measuring his worth. Ethan felt the weight of centuries of expectation pressing down on him, the culmination of his months of running, surviving, and adapting. He straightened, meeting her gaze with a steady confidence that belied his exhaustion. Humans survived not just with technology, but with resolve, and now that resolve would be tested. "You are far from your home, human," Lyra said, her voice echoing softly in the chamber. It was calm, yet it carried the authority of one who could end his life with a gesture. "You have traveled through lands that would kill lesser beings. Why are you here? Why do you not flee?" She was not only judging his actions, but his intent, his honesty, and his capacity for understanding. Humans were unpredictable, impulsive, and emotional, but perhaps that was also their strength, the ability to adapt, to feel, and to make choices under pressure. "You speak with honesty," Lyra said after a long pause. "Many before you would have lied or begged, yet you speak truth. That is rare among intruders. You have endured more than most beings could. You have survived not only the lands, but also the weight of your own choices. I will test you further, but know this. Your ingenuity, courage, and honesty are being observed. These traits may yet serve a purpose greater than survival." The Queen's gaze felt like it could pierce his very thoughts, but he held steady. Humans survived by facing fear, by acting even when the outcome was uncertain. He had faced countless dangers, outwitted patrols, and survived alien worlds. This, standing before the Queen, was just another challenge. Suddenly, alarms rang throughout the palace. The outer patrols had detected unusual movement, and the Queen's generals began mobilizing. Ethan realized this was a test, not just of his courage and ingenuity, but of his ability to act under pressure. Without hesitation, he activated a small device on his belt, releasing a pulse that scrambled the sensors momentarily, allowing him to slip further into the chamber. Lyra watched, unflinching. "Observe, human," she said. "Actions speak louder than words. Let us see if you can act with wisdom when every moment counts." Every action demonstrated not only his resourcefulness, but his compassion. Humans survived not just by protecting themselves, but by protecting others when possible. As the alarms faded and the palace regained calm, Lyra's expression softened slightly. She had observed him in action under stress and judged him capable. Not perfect, not invincible, but capable of reason, courage, and morality, traits she valued in her empire. "You have passed the first measure of worth, human," she said. "But know this, the journey is not over. You have entered my world, survived its trials, and begun to demonstrate the qualities that may yet make you exceptional." The Queen had not forgiven him, not yet. But she had seen him, not just as a trespasser, but as a being capable of intelligence, courage, and morality. And in that moment, he realized that human resilience was not merely survival. It was the power to endure, adapt, and inspire trust, even in the most impossible circumstances. With that understanding, Ethan prepared for what lay ahead. The Queen's world was vast, her tests far from over, but he had already proven something fundamental. Humanity was not weak, and humans were more than their mistakes. And perhaps, just perhaps, that could change everything. The palace of the alien Queen Lyra was larger than anything Ethan had ever imagined. Towering spires of crystal rose toward the sky, humming with energy that seemed alive. Yet for all its beauty, danger lurked in every shadow. Ethan moved cautiously, his mind sharp, remembering every lesson the months of fleeing had taught him. Every step mattered. One mistake could end everything. He had been summoned before the Queen, but the calm assessment he had received did not mean he was safe. The palace was alive with observers, guards, and automated defense systems. Lyra's generals were everywhere, each waiting for a chance to prove their loyalty by enforcing the law she could override. Ethan knew they might see him as a trespasser, a threat to the Queen's authority, or worse. As he explored the inner chambers, he noticed subtle changes in the palace's energy flow. The Queen's presence was stronger here, and small pulses of light seemed to respond to his movements. He realized the palace was almost alive, a reflection of the Queen's will. Humans often underestimated the influence of an intelligent ruler over their environment, but Ethan understood instinctively that every choice he made would be observed, judged, and recorded. He moved through the corridors with caution, but also with purpose. His goal was clear: demonstrate that humans were capable of intelligence, courage, and empathy. Each encounter would be a test, each decision a chance to show his worth. A sudden alarm shattered the calm. Hovercraft engines whirred and lights flashed. Ethan ducked behind a crystal column as a squad of Zethurian soldiers moved swiftly through the corridor, scanning every inch. They did not recognize him immediately, but the pulse of his presence had triggered a warning signal. Ethan's mind raced. He could run, but he had no clear exit. The soldiers were fast, precise, and heavily armed. Instead, he relied on strategy. Using a small device he had crafted during his months of hiding, he released a low-frequency pulse that scrambled the soldiers' sensors momentarily. They paused, confused, and Ethan slipped through the nearest doorway, moving deeper into the palace. The corridors led him to a chamber filled with holographic projections, showing the vast reaches of Lyra's empire. Trade routes, planetary systems, and fleets of ships rotated in midair. It was an impressive display of organization and control. He realized that the Queen's power was not just military. It was knowledge, foresight, and the ability to inspire loyalty across star systems. Suddenly, a door opened behind him. Ethan spun, ready for confrontation, but instead of a patrol, he saw a group of Zethurian outcasts he had helped earlier. They had followed him, risking their lives to guide him through the palace. One of them, the wiry, blue-skinned female who had first trusted him, nodded. "We are with you, human. Follow us carefully." The danger was far from over. He had entered the Queen's world, but now his survival depended not just on courage, but on cleverness and decisive action. They reached a central chamber where the energy of the palace converged. Ethan realized this was where the Queen often meditated and made decisions. Hovercraft drones patrolled the ceiling, scanning for intruders. He knew that being discovered here could be fatal. The group paused, and the blue-skinned female handed him a small crystal. It contained a message. "The Queen trusts you, but not all her generals share her judgment. Protect her if necessary. Prove humanity is worthy." He had survived countless dangers, but now he faced a responsibility that could determine the future of his species. Yet he did not hesitate. Humans had always faced impossible odds, relying on intelligence and courage to survive. He had trained for this, in a sense, through months of fleeing and improvising. Now all that preparation would be tested in the most extreme way. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber. One of the outer doors had been breached. The coup had begun. Zethurian soldiers loyal to the rebels flooded in, weapons drawn and shields activated. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had no advanced weapons, no protective armor, only his wits and the devices he had fashioned from scraps. But humans thrived under pressure. He assessed the situation quickly. The rebels were confident but predictable, relying on numbers and power rather than ingenuity. Ethan activated a device that emitted a pulse, temporarily disabling the energy shields of the nearest drones. They tumbled to the floor, harmless, but alerting the rebels that the human was not powerless. He moved swiftly, guiding the outcasts to positions where they could block the rebels' approach. Using the environment to his advantage, he caused energy conduits to redirect pulses that created barriers, forcing the attackers to split their forces. Every move he made was precise, calculated, and executed with speed. Humans had survived by thinking, not just fighting. The rebels hesitated, confused by the unexpected defense. Ethan seized the moment. He directed the outcasts to flank the attackers, combining their knowledge of the palace with his human ingenuity. The rebels were skilled, but they were not accustomed to improvisation under pressure. One by one, they were forced to retreat, outsmarted by a human who had nothing but courage, intelligence, and quick thinking. Amid the chaos, Ethan spotted the queen. Lyra had arrived in the chamber, observing silently. She was calm, almost serene, even as her palace erupted in danger. Yet her eyes were sharp, evaluating every action Ethan took. Humans often struggled with fear under such pressure, but Ethan's composure demonstrated something rare: calm intelligence and strategic thinking in the face of overwhelming odds. The final confrontation came swiftly. A squad of elite rebels attempted to reach the queen directly, bypassing Ethan and the outcasts. He intercepted them, using a combination of clever traps and misdirection. He lured them toward energy conduits, causing sparks to arc harmlessly but effectively blocking their path. Each movement was deliberate, precise, and human ingenuity in action. The rebels, realizing they were outmaneuvered, attempted a desperate attack. Ethan engaged with speed and cunning, redirecting their movements, isolating them from one another, and neutralizing their threat without lethal force. Humans valued life, even when under extreme pressure, and his actions reflected that. Finally, the chamber fell silent. The rebels had been defeated or forced to retreat. The outcasts gathered, exhausted but safe. Ethan stood tall, breathing heavily, his mind still racing with the intensity of the encounter. The queen approached, her presence commanding attention. "You have acted with courage, intelligence, and moral judgment," Lyra said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of her authority. "You protected those who trusted you, defended my palace, and demonstrated qualities that are rare among your kind. Humans are capable of more than I anticipated. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion are what we strive for, even when the odds are against us. Trust is earned through deeds, not words, and you have begun to earn mine." For the first time in months, Ethan felt a sense of hope that went beyond mere survival. The queen's respect was not granted lightly, and earning it could change the relationship between humanity and the Zethurians forever. He had demonstrated that humans could be allies, not threats, and that their qualities, resilience, ingenuity, and compassion, were worthy of recognition. Lyra gestured toward the outcasts. "They trusted you and you protected them. That is the essence of leadership. Humans have a way of inspiring loyalty, even in alien worlds. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I understood. I want to prove that humanity can be trusted, that we can contribute to peace and cooperation between our species. Remember this: survival is not just about living, but about how one acts in the face of impossible odds. That is the true measure of a species." Every step he had taken, every decision he had made, had brought him closer to understanding the true strength of his species. As he looked across the chamber at the queen and her empire, he realized that his journey was not just about fleeing or surviving. It was about proving that humanity could rise to challenges, earn respect, and forge connections even in the most alien and dangerous circumstances. And perhaps in doing so, he could change the course of history, for both his species and for the Zethurians. Ethan knew the next steps would be even more challenging. The queen's world was vast, and the influence of her generals was far-reaching. But he had demonstrated that human qualities, adaptability, intelligence, courage, and moral judgment, were forces to be reckoned with. He had survived, protected others, and earned a measure of trust from the most powerful being in the galaxy. And for the first time, Ethan felt that the years of running, hiding, and fighting were leading to something greater than survival. They were leading to recognition, understanding, and perhaps even forgiveness. Ethan stood in the central chamber of the Queen's palace, the hum of the energy conduits echoing softly around him. The immediate threat from the rebel generals had passed, but the air still felt tense, like the calm before a storm. He knew this was the final moment of his long journey. Months of fleeing, surviving, and proving himself had led to this. The Queen, Lyra, was watching him, her luminous eyes reflecting both authority and curiosity. He straightened, recalling the countless times he had survived by ingenuity, courage, and compassion. Every moment, every decision, every narrow escape had brought him here. Humans were resilient, humans adapted, humans could survive in the most impossible circumstances, and now he hoped humans could be recognized as more than fragile creatures to the Zethurians. Lyra descended from her raised platform with a calm, measured grace. Her presence filled the chamber. Soldiers, drones, and even some of her advisors stood back, their eyes trained on the human who had dared to enter the heart of the Queen's empire and survive. She paused in front of him and spoke, her voice calm but carrying the weight of power. "You have proven yourself in ways few could," she said. "Not only have you survived, but you have acted with intelligence, courage, and compassion. You have protected those who trusted you, and you have demonstrated qualities I did not expect from your species. But now we must speak of forgiveness." He nodded slowly, keeping his composure. Humans had endured judgment before. They had earned respect in situations where others assumed failure. Lyra raised her hand, and a holographic projection appeared, showing the events of the past months. It highlighted Ethan's actions, how he had survived in harsh alien environments, how he had protected Zethurian outcasts, how he had outsmarted rebel forces without unnecessary bloodshed. Every choice, every action was laid bare for observation. "You could have fled, begged for your life, or tried to deceive," Lyra said. "Instead, you acted with honesty and moral judgment. You faced impossible odds, and in doing so, you revealed the strength of your species. It is this that grants you a measure of forgiveness. I only sought to survive, and to show that humanity can act with integrity, even in the most difficult circumstances. You have earned my forgiveness not through pleading, but through demonstrating the qualities that make humans remarkable. Therefore, I forgive you, Ethan Cole, not as an act of mercy alone, but as recognition of humanity's potential." Humanity, through him, had earned a place in the hearts and minds of an alien civilization that had once seen them as insignificant. Lyra stepped closer. "There is more," she said. "Your actions have shown me that humans are capable of much more than their reputation suggests. They can be allies, innovators, and protectors. You will serve as a bridge between our species, demonstrating that collaboration is possible when courage and integrity guide our choices." For the first time, humans had not only survived in alien territory, they had earned respect, influence, and the potential for partnership with a civilization far older and more advanced. "I will do my best," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I will prove that humans can live up to the trust you place in us. But you have shown the qualities that may inspire peace and collaboration. Your species has potential. Do not waste it. Humans have survived and thrived through ingenuity and moral judgment. Now, it is time to extend that knowledge beyond your world." He felt a sense of pride, tempered by the weight of duty. Humans were not merely survivors, they could be leaders, innovators, and moral agents in the galaxy. He spent the next hours walking with the Queen through the palace, observing the technology, the administration, and the intelligence networks that maintained the empire. She explained how her decisions were made, how diplomacy and judgment shaped the lives of millions, and how even a single individual could influence outcomes across star systems. Ethan listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Humans had learned to survive, but now they would learn to thrive in collaboration with other species. The outcasts who had helped him were honored by the Queen, their loyalty and courage acknowledged. Ethan realized that one of humanity's greatest strengths was its ability to inspire loyalty and trust, even in the most alien and challenging environments. Cooperation, empathy, and intelligence were as powerful as any weapon or technology. As night fell over the palace, Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The crystalline towers shimmered under the twin moons, casting reflections across the plains below. He thought of Earth, of his home, of the small world that had once seemed so distant and insignificant compared to the vastness of Zithera 7. Now he understood that even humans, fragile and unassuming, could make a difference on a cosmic scale. Lyra joined him silently. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Why forgiveness was granted?" Forgiveness is recognition. Recognition is the first step toward trust. Trust can shape the future. You have given me hope that humans can rise to challenges, act with morality, and contribute to a galaxy that is far larger than any one species alone. It was more than personal vindication. It was the validation of human qualities: intelligence, courage, empathy, and resilience. These were traits that no technology or weapon could replicate. They were uniquely human, and they had been acknowledged by one of the most powerful beings in the universe. In the following days, Ethan began working with the Queen to establish channels of communication between humans and Zethurians. Plans were made to send ambassadors, share technology responsibly, and foster understanding between species. Humans had earned a place among the stars, not through conquest or power, but through the qualities that had allowed one man to survive, protect others, and prove the worth of his species. Ethan reflected on the years he had spent running, hiding, and surviving. Each day of fear, each night of isolation, each moment of doubt had been a lesson. He had learned the value of intelligence, the necessity of courage, and the strength of empathy. And now, all of those lessons could be applied for the good of both species. He walked through the palace one last time with the queen, observing the city's operations. She explained the challenges, the responsibilities, and the need for careful decision-making. Ethan listened, understanding that survival had been only the first step. Now came the work of collaboration, guidance, and building trust across civilizations. At the edge of the palace, he paused and looked back one final time. The chambers where he had fought, hidden, and strategized were silent. The city of Zethurians continued to hum with life, its energy flowing through towers and streets. He realized that his journey, years of running from the alien queen, had ended not in fear or punishment but in respect, recognition, and purpose. Lyra's voice broke his thoughts. "Remember this, Ethan Cole. Humanity has proven that it can endure. It has proven that courage, intelligence, and moral judgment matter. Do not squander this opportunity. Your species has potential, and it is now up to you to ensure that potential is realized." For the first time in years, Ethan felt peace. He had survived the chase, faced the ultimate authority in the galaxy, and earned forgiveness not only for himself but for humanity. His journey had shown that even one human could demonstrate the strength, morality, and ingenuity of an entire species. And in that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Survival was important, but it was only the beginning. The true power of humanity lay in its ability to rise, to adapt, to inspire, and to act with courage and integrity, even in the face of impossible odds. The alien queen had forgiven him not just for his sake, but because she had seen the best of what humans could be. Ethan looked up at the skies, feeling the weight and promise of the future. Humanity was no longer a distant, fragile species. They had earned a place among the stars, not through strength or conquest, but through qualities that defined their very nature: courage, intelligence, empathy, and resilience. And so, for the first time in years, Ethan walked forward without fear. The chase was over. Humanity's story among the stars was just beginning.